going over what accreditation means in the first place. We had one of these sessions about a year ago, and that was one of the questions that came up. So I put a definition here by the U.S. Department of Education, and basically they define accreditation as an effort to assess the quality of institutions, programs, and services. The goal of accreditation is to ensure that education provided by institutions of higher education meet and maintain a certain standard of quality in the United States. There are a few different kinds of accreditation. We have institutional and we have program-based. VIU is institutionally accredited, and what this means is that our accreditation covers all programs and services within the entire institution. Programmatic accreditation is based on a certain set of programs or even just one program or school. So as an example, there's an accrediting agency called IACBE, and that is for business-oriented programs. There are a large variety of those for all of the different disciplines. At VIU, my office, which is Institutional Effectiveness and Quality Assurance, is responsible for maintaining compliance with our accrediting bodies and all other regulatory affairs at VIU. So this is just an overview of the different types of institutions that we work with in terms of compliance or accreditation. First over here we have ACICS, that is our national accrediting body today. We're working on applying for regional accreditation, but this is a long process. So our office ensures that we're in compliance with those standards as well, or preparing ourselves for future standards that we might have. But also it goes beyond that. We also deal with the federal government, the state government, in different capacities. Federal student aid, that's through the Department of Education. You'll often hear it referred to as Title IV funding, but any students who are receiving federal student loans or grants or other forms of aid, we deal with the Department of Education, Office of Federal Student Aid on that. We also deal with the Department of Veteran Services in Virginia for ex-military members who might be receiving some benefits towards their education that way. CHEV, over here in blue, is the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia. So every year we go under recertification with the state. We actually are in that process now. And that's an annual thing we do all the time. We're required to submit certain documentation. But we also deal with the local government in terms of zoning or building codes, accessibility, emergency planning, transportation, a lot of things with the local and state government, but also we deal with the Department of Homeland Security. And you guys have maybe come into contact with that area through CVIS and F1 visa approval. So Department of Homeland Security runs that program. So as you can see, compliance is a big field. There are a lot of different standards that VIU works to be in 100% compliance with all the time. So in relation to that, the email that you received from the Office of the President was related to ACICS and the Department of Education. ACICS is a national accrediting agency who is currently and has been for several decades recognized by the U.S. Department of Education as an accrediting body. What this means is that they're a gatekeeper for Title IV, which is federal student aid, but it also means that they're held to certain standards by the U.S. Department of Education. In the past year or so, ACICS has undergone some scrutiny by the Department of Education due to some activities by different for-profit institutions that they accredited. One you might have heard of was Corinthian Colleges, which collapsed. But there are various for-profit schools that are not to the quality that one would expect them to be at as an institution accredited by a Department of Education recognized agency. So what has happened is the Department of Education staff and a congressional panel called NASIKI have recommended that the U.S. Department of Education withdraw ACICS's recognition. This recommendation was forwarded to the Secretary of Education. There's one specific person who is responsible for making this decision, and it's a very big decision. This will impact more than 800 800,000 students. So it's not something that they're taking lightly, but they have 90 days to determine whether or not ACICS will remain recognized by the Department of Education or not. At this point, ACICS will appeal if it is an unfavorable decision. They have had a couple of communications with the schools that they accredit, and it's my understanding that if the decision is not favorable, that they will appeal. So what this means is that it will be tied up in court for a very long time. If they do lose their recognition, we have 18 months, give or take, to seek accreditation with a different organization that is recognized if we want to maintain federal student aid funding. And like I mentioned before, there are 800,000 students that attend ACICS accredited schools, 900 campuses, and there are many in our direct region, schools that you may have heard of that your friends may go to that are facing the same issue with ACICS. I wanted to go over a couple of resources for students. The U.S. Department of Education has put up this blog, and it's just a resource for you guys to look at. It's kind of an FAQ that says, it answers some of the same questions that we're talking about today. And we'll go over that when I'm finished. I'll pull up that page so you can kind of see what it looks like, and I'll also send these slides to everybody so that you have the link. But other important notes are that your F1 visa is separate from accreditation. So one question that my office has received a lot of is, what happens to my visa? Can I still do OPT or CPT? And my status here as an international student, how is that impacted? The short answer is really, as far as we can tell, it's not. Before VIU was accredited, we were offering I-20s for students to come on F1 visas, and we'll continue to do that. The Department of Homeland Security is separate from the Department of Education, so they don't always speak to each other, and being an F1 visa holder it's not a requirement to attend an accredited university that's recognized by the Department of Education. So your visa status should be fine. In addition, another misconception that we've been getting a lot of is that if they lose their recognition, they're immediately going to be shut down, and that's not really the case. If ACICS loses their recognition, they will no longer be a gatekeeper for federal student aid. So that means any students who attend VIU and receive federal financial aid will not have that opportunity if we were to remain ACICS accredited. So they can continue to operate as an institution. It doesn't shut down their business. I assume that they would take a large hit if their membership were all to leave, but losing their recognition is not an immediate death sentence for the institution. And then I just wanted to go over some of the future goals for VIU, things that we've been working on before this happened and a long time ago. So immediately, we have started the process of applying for national accreditation with another institution. We've been doing this over the past few months, and we hope to achieve this within 2 years or earlier. Again, this is another national institution. They are recognized by the Department of Education, and we are heavy into that application process now. We have been working over the past year with our schools and departments on program-based accreditation. So every school or department here at VIU is working on a different type of program-based accreditation. And the purpose of this is to bring more quality enhancements. It just shows that we are on a higher level than just being institutionally accredited. It's an additional credential for each of our different programs. So I mentioned IACBE with the School of Business. They're heavy into that process, working on applying for a program-based accreditation. It's just different additional standards that we want to meet and be able to say that you're getting the top quality degrees in that school. And then in addition, we've been taking major steps over the past 3 years to enhance our services and our programs in hopes of attaining regional accreditation. I know it sounds interesting, but regional is actually the gold standard of accreditation in this country. You would think that national sounds prestigious, but here in the United States, regional accreditation is the most prestigious form of accreditation. So We've been vigorously working towards that. You've maybe experienced a lot of positive changes here, such as enhancing the library resources and different things like that. But we are continuing full steam ahead with that goal. It's a more long-term goal because the process to become regionally accredited takes a lot longer. So the reason that we started with this immediate plan is because it's a shorter process. And if ACICS does lose their recognition, we want to always have a backup in place. So I think that the most important thing that I want to echo to you guys is that VIU really takes these issues seriously, that our integrity as an institution is the most important thing, and providing you guys with the top level of degrees. And so everything that we're doing in this office is in hopes of maintaining that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. While you're thinking about your questions, we can look at the Department of Education blog that they've put out. So you can see here, ED is what they call the Department of Education, but they've put this blog up saying, on June 23rd, this congressional panel voted to suspend this recognition, and here's what it means to students. So there are a few questions here. How do I know if my school is accredited by ACICS? They have a website where you can look that up. VIU is accredited by ACICS, so you know that we are. They want to ask, what does this mean for students at these schools? And the very first thing they say is, don't panic. It's an initial recommendation. This whole thing is going to play out over a really long period of time. It could be that they come out at the 30 or 60-day mark and decide to continue the recognition with some conditions. I think that's probably the hope of ACICS. I can't really speak for them. Or it could be that it's going to be tied up in court for years to come. It's not a final decision right now, and so there's not really any panicking that should happen at this point. After a decision is made, the accrediting agency has, I believe, 30 days to submit an appeal packet. So they have 10 days to say, we intend to appeal, and then additional 20 days or so to submit their packet for appeal. So, again, there are just many questions here. And then one of the other questions is, what if a school ultimately can't be accredited by somebody else? What if they can't find somebody? It says at this point, students would no longer be able to use their federal aid at those schools. Anybody that's on financial aid receiving federal student loans, which if you're on an F1 visa, you are not eligible for federal student loans, those students would need to find another school where they can access federal student aid. So that's the biggest thing with this decision, is for students who are receiving financial aid from the federal government, whether it's a Pell Grant, you may have heard that term, or a federal loan, direct loans, those kinds of things. There are a lot more questions. So I already graduated from an ACICS school. Is my degree compromised? No. Schools were accredited at the time that you received the degree. It's still a valid credential. Even if ACICS ultimately loses recognition, schools have a chance to find a different accrediting agency. So, the bottom line is that they have a lot of information here. If this information provided isn't enough and you'd like to dig deeper into it, they have this other link on that page. It's a 15-page document about the recognition process with the U.S. Department of Education. So, anybody think of any questions? Lunch will be here really soon, and I'm sticking around. I'll do another, I'll run through the presentation again at 1 o'clock if anybody wants to see it again. But sure.
In the process of accreditation, will it have any impact on the H1 master's quota?
On the H1?
Master's quota with the people from ACICS accredited institutions have an advantage. during the process of
applying for an
accreditation-
H1 visa.
I'm talking about during the process of H1, the college accreditation change. Will it have any impact on the H1 master's quota if in case somebody applies for it?
What's an H1 master's quota?
Somebody who gets a special quota of 20,000 visas, and if they are passing out of any national accreditation agency.
I don't, as far as I know, anything immigration related is completely separate from accreditation. So if it's related to CVIS or Department of Homeland Security, it should not be impacted by switching accreditation.
So visa is fine, everything is fine.
Visa should be fine, yeah. We still are an authorized SEVP I-20 issuing institution, so none of that changes if our accreditation changes. And like I said, there was a time many years ago, I was working here then, I'm very old, but VIU at one time was not accredited at all, and we were issuing I-20s at that time as well.
Okay.
So I know it's separate. Yes. Sure.
Same question which he asked. So some of my friends told me, I don't know whether it is correct or not. I just want to get a clear clarification from you, sir.
Sure.
The question is, he said if the university have the accreditation, so after completion of graduation, the students will be in the professional life, right? So at that point of time, if the student can apply in two quotas, like the master cap as well as the student, the general quota, if the university have the accreditation. For example, if the university doesn't have the accreditation, the student can apply for H1 in one quota, that is the general. So they can't get the master's cap because of the accreditation. Is that true or not?
I don't know anything about the immigration related stuff, and the person to talk to about that would be in our DSO office. They know all of the rules about that, but what I can tell you is that even if ACICS loses that recognition, VIU will still remain accredited. By ACICS, our grant is valid through 2018, and hopefully before that point, we will be nationally accredited by a different institution. So I want to assure you that we're taking it very seriously, and in the event that something negative does happen for ACICS, we're taking steps to move away from that in advance.
Yeah, if we complete about 2 or 3 semesters in this, and if VIU loses accreditation, if we go to some other college, university, what will happen to all the credits we gained in their
Right.
bond?
So that's a very good question, and that depends on the school that you would transfer to or that you would enroll in a different program. It just really depends on the policy of that school. As an institution accredited by a U.S. Department of Education recognized accrediting agency, they're supposed to take those credits because the recognition is the same. However, if the school has a different policy, that would be up to that institution. So, at any point, we hope that we are not unaccredited. I mean, that's our biggest thing, is that we will remain accredited. Sure. Sure.
So that means we don't. I mean, the student won't get any problem with the PPT as well as
The OPT
F1.
and the CPT
Sorry, OPT
Oh.
and the F1 status, right? There is no problem.
should not be a problem.
We are completing next year masters.
Uh-huh.
So we are applying for OPT. There will be 6 months accreditation in the university. So once we need to extend our OPT, if any problem occurs at the time.
There should not be a problem because OPT is separate from accreditation. And the university has to be accredited, period.
And what
we will
about
remain.
H1 when we are applying for H1 through our
Employer?
your employer?
Uh-huh.
If any problem, if accreditation is over, for example, I'm asking. So we are doing masters here.
Right.
So we are not applying through general. We are applying through our masters.
Right. Well, the way that an H1 would work, she's asking about if you were to find employment in the United States after completing your master's degree and they were to sponsor you for an H1 visa, that is separate from your education. Your employer would sponsor that, and the petition is wholly separate from what degree, from VIU. So they have chosen to hire you, and they make the case for why. So.
If accreditation is over also, we are going to apply 2018. So accreditation is, you are
We
told
would
what,
renew
18
by that,
months.
yeah, we would renew by that point or have a different agency.
But
It's
it will
never.
not affect us.
It should not affect you with an H1, just as it should not affect you with a CPT or OPT petition. Be separate. All immigration is separate.
Thank you.